IVM.
This week's episode of the Edges Sledges Cricket Podcast is brought to you by our sponsor, Storytel. Storytel is a website where you can get ebooks and audiobooks whenever you want them. And thanks to their sponsorship of the IVM network, if you visit storytel.com/IVM, you get a 30-day free trial instead of a 14-day free trial. So for the duration of their sponsorship of our show, we're going to be recommending a new book to you each week. And this week, I'm recommending a book called Roaring Back, The Fall and Rise of Tiger Woods. It's by an author, Kurt Samson, and he talks about Tiger Woods being one of the greatest golfers of all time, then disappearing from the scene for a little bit, and then obviously making a comeback most recently in 2018 and 2019. In the spirit of cricketers like Dhoni being away from the game, maybe making a comeback, maybe not yet, we thought that was an interesting one to recommend. So again, check it out at storytel.com/IVM for a 30-day free trial. And now enjoy your show. Welcome, everyone, to episode 86 of the Edges and Sledges Cricket Podcast. Joining me this week is DJ. I'm your host, Ashwin, from Cincinnati. DJ is in London, as always. And I'm hosting this week because DJ initially wanted to, but it feels like he was out a little bit late last night, so I think his voice may not quite be up to the par you guys are used to, so he apologizes in advance for that. But DJ, how are you feeling? It sounds like you had a pretty fun weekend.
I'm recovering slowly, so I'm feeling well. Looking forward to the chat. Hopefully my voice holds up to the rules of the podcast.
And what exactly happened? Was it a flu or something? Or why is your voice not great?
No, so we had a university alumni meet yesterday, which, it started at 5 o'clock in the evening and then ended at about 3:30 at night, well, the next morning, really. So, yeah, it was a good time had by all. Good to meet some old friends and, nostalgia. All the university memories came flooding back.
Excellent. Of course, I knew that, but I wanted to make sure you had a chance to share that with our listeners too. So glad you have a fun weekend. It's been a pretty busy week in the world of cricket, despite the fact that since we last joined you guys for episode 85, there has not been an India game, but between the two test matches going on, Australia versus Pakistan, New Zealand versus England, of course, the Syed Mustaq Ali Trophy just wrapped up with Karnataka winning the championship for the second year in a row. But outside of that, as we think about the Indian national side, it feels like the vast majority of conversation, discussion, news has all been about wicket-keepers. So, DJ, we've often joked sort of that we should be called the Rishabh Pant podcast, that we spent so much time talking about Rishabh Pant. And here we are, as we listed out, what do we want to talk about today? The vast majority of it was around wicket-keepers. Is this just a new reality until we figure out the post-MS Dhoni future?
Yeah, it's quite incredible, isn't it? The topics slotted themselves quite neatly into wicket-keeper batsman after wicket-keeper batsman. So, yeah, maybe if we started this podcast in the 2000s, it would have been called the MS Dhoni show, right? And I'm still trying to get it re-christianed, but I'm sure we'll have lots to say about that later in the show.
I have a feeling if that's your petition, then if we're a democratic podcast, then Varun and I will be 2 for 2 against 1, where we are not in favor of calling it that. But let's get into all of it. Let's start with the wicketkeeper who has been recalled for the India-West Indies T20s that kick off in about 5 days from the time of recording this. So on Friday, December 6th, India plays their first T20 match against the West Indies. And the man recalled was Sanju Samson. So just by way of quick background for anybody who hasn't been keeping in touch, Samson was included for the first time in a long time in the squad to play against Bangladesh. He did not play in the 11 in any game, didn't get a game, and then was dropped from the squad to play West Indies. And a couple shows ago, and in our last show, Varun in particular shared that he felt it's incredibly unfair. What's the point of being called into the squad, not getting game time, and then being dropped? And as it so happened, shortly after that, there was an injury that kind of let Sanju Samson find his way back into the side. So, DJ, do you want to tell our listeners what happened, how he got back in, and then answer for me how you feel about it?
Yeah, so unfortunately for Shikhar Dhawan, he got a knee injury, so he got a cut on his knee, which required stitches and stuff. So he actually had to be pulled out of the squad because he wouldn't be fit in time. And there was a little bit of backlash, I think, that the selectors got for leaving Sanju Samson out without actually giving him a shot. And I think you've already mentioned that it was a bit strange. We talked last week about his tweeting a smiley face, so maybe that helped his case. I don't know really what I feel about it. I don't know whether he's still going to get a shot given the middle order that the Indian team has and where he's going to fit in. But it was actually good to see him back in the squad, because it looked from the outside to be quite unfair to drop a player without actually giving him a shot, particularly since your main wicketkeeper, Rishabh Pant, has been struggling, right? So we'll see if Samson does get to play in the series against the West Indies, but good to see the young man. He's only 24 years old, right? So he's definitely one for the future. Good to see him back into the squad.
Yeah, I think well said. And you sort of alluded to it, but Rishabh Pant has been the first choice and actually only wicketkeeper in the squad prior to Sanju Samson getting called up. And there was a fantastic tweet you shared with us from KAU Stats, KAU Stats, which is a great account. Highly encourage people to follow it. Really good statistics. But he basically said Rishabh Pant's last 6 T20 innings were 30 of 27 and 28 of 32 in the Syed Mustaq Ali Trophy, 6 of 9 versus Bangladesh, 27 of 26 versus Bangladesh, 19 of 20 versus South Africa, and 4 of 5 versus South Africa. All 6 innings were at a strike rate under 115. Prior to this 6-match streak, he had never batted more than 2 innings in a row at a strike rate under 115. So that's a lot to digest. But DJ, we talk about him all the time on this show. There's a lot going on. What is happening with Rishabh Pant? Why has he batted 6 innings in a row at a strike rate of 115? And is it the right call for them to have selected him as the only wicketkeeper in the squad for the West Indies?
So, of course, I mean, I don't know whether we can say what's going on in Rishabh Pant's head at the moment, but what it looks like, again, from the outside, is a loss of confidence in his game. I think he's probably overthinking his game a little bit, and his game wasn't one which required much thinking. It was quite a see ball, hit ball kind of game. And that's, I think, what attracted us to Rishabh Pant's fearlessness in some ways. And then there was all that chatter earlier in the year about, how fearlessness and recklessness are not the same thing, and all of that stuff. And there were comments made by Ravi Shastri, there were comments made by Vikram Rathore, who's their coach. So there seem to be too many people getting into Rishabh Pant's head for my liking. And he's a young player. He's 22 years old. He's done well in the past with the game that he had. He did fairly well in the test arena as well. He's lost his spot there too. So I think what he's going through right now is a crisis of confidence more than anything else. I hope it's not a deeper mental health issue. Obviously, lots of cricketers have been coming out with disclosing their mental health issues recently, but I hope it isn't more serious than a confidence issue.
So, quick question. Friday's game coming up against the West Indies, is he in your playing 11?
Yeah, he has to be, man. He is the incumbent limited overs wicketkeeper for me. He is definitely the number one selection right now, and now is the time where you back your players. Now is the time where you say, yes, we're going to give you the confidence to go out and play. Now is the time when a player is down. That's when you back them and say, we believe in you. We know you can deliver this. He's got the fastest T20 100 in domestic cricket, I think 30 balls. He did open the batting as well in the Syed Mustaq Ali Trophy. So he's trying different things. I think he just needs one good innings to get that feeling back, that feeling of scoring runs and feeling good about himself, right?
Yeah, interesting. I think well said. I do think it's interesting that he said he's the incumbent, but this squad playing against the West Indies will have both Sanju Samson in this squad and, of course, KL Rahul, who has not kept wicket for India in quite a while. But, he's been keeping wicket domestically. He kept wicket for Karnataka in T20s. I don't know if he's quite up to the caliber to keep in the tests, ODIs or even the longer format like tests. But in T20s, I wonder if that's something they might explore. So lots more to come about that. We'll keep talking about wicket keepers. You kind of mentioned briefly that, he's the incumbent. We talked about at the end of the Bangladesh series, actually, the fact that Sanju Samson was not in the playing 11 at any time probably helped his bench, his kind of likelihood to be called up to the World Cup squad. Basically, the point we were making is not playing in the 11 because the other wicketkeeper failed probably increased your market value. What we're starting to see, interestingly, is that MS Dhoni's market value has shot up because of Pant's lapse in form. So, DJ, you're obviously a huge MS Dhoni fan. We've talked about this many times on the show. You and I have disagreed very publicly many times before. MS Dhoni at a press conference basically said, January tak mat puchna, basically meaning don't ask me till January about my future. But what is your take on the situation? A, he said don't ask me till January. B, Ravi Shastri said the IPL is going to be really important. Do we really think IPL of 2020 could go in Dhoni's favor and he's going to make a comeback to the Indian side?
So there's lots to unpack there, and I know our listeners who've been listening to the show before have been waiting for this to happen for a while. So let's go with it. I think let's start with how the MS Dhoni saga unfolded. He hasn't played since we got knocked out of the World Cup in July. He went away and joined the Territorial Army for a couple of weeks. He then opted out of the various series that India have been playing. And MSK Prasad, another wicket-keeper, so given that this is the episode of wicket-keepers, the chief selector of India, another wicket-keeper, said that they are moving on from MS Dhoni, right? In October, Ravi Shastri then says, he deserves to go out on his own terms. Saurav Ganguly says the same thing. Virat Kohli tweets or puts a picture up on Instagram saying partner in crime, and MS Dhoni is in there. And then these set of comments were last made, which were Ravi Shastri saying that it depends on what the other keepers are doing and what MS Dhoni does himself. So whether he comes back and he's in form and what he does in the IPL. And then Dhoni himself saying, I'll tell you in January. Now, the first thing is the reference to January. To my mind, what that allows is Rishabh Pant to actually score runs against the West Indies and kill the speculation, right? So I think Pant will play against the West Indies. If he does well against the West Indies, all the speculation will end. It will just be done and there will be no more chatter about all of this stuff. Then the next thing is, can he play? Well, he's 38 years old. He's pretty fit. He was playing the one-day game, which is a longer variety of the game, until a little while ago. And I mean, if he wants to get fit, he'll get fit and play the game. Now, the question is, should he be playing the game, and why is this discussion come up again? Has the team management asked him? Have the selectors asked him whether he should be playing? What is driving this chatter about MS Dhoni? And that's what I don't understand. I mean, frankly, I personally would love to see him play again, but is he really genuinely the best choice for a T20 game? I don't know. I genuinely don't know. I mean, he played the 2016 World T20 in India when that happened last, and he was fit enough then. And fitness isn't really a problem. It's those big hits, and whether Pant or Samson or even a KL Rahul, as you said, can supply them better than MS Dhoni, that remains the question. Now, if he smashes the bowlers all over the park in the IPL, is that the right method to gauge whether MS Dhoni is back to being the Dhoni of old? I don't know, because he took 25 runs of Umesh Yadav last year, and even then he wasn't really smashing every ball out of the park. So that consistency of providing big hits, that's what MS Dhoni has been lacking in the past few years. If somehow he has a resurgence magically, I don't know. What I'm worried about is we seem to be going backwards, and we seem to be kind of going begging to Dhoni. I don't know. I hope that's not the case, but it seems like the team management or even the captain may want to go back to Dhoni and say, can you come and play the World T20? And for me, that's actually a backward step, because the guy, I think he's done. Frankly, I think he is personally done. He doesn't want to play anymore. He's won everything that has to be won. He hasn't played for the past few months. And I mean, what if you were in a place, why would you come back and play? I mean, what are you going to achieve by doing that? You've won everything there is to be won already, right?
But then why wouldn't he have just said, I'm done, retired, end of the 2019 World Cup, finished, good, thanks guys, great career, let's celebrate it and call it?
So after the 2019 World Cup, I think the emotion was too high for him to call it immediately, right? And what I wonder is whether something has gone on behind the scenes with Kohli, Shastri and the selectors and all of these guys just saying, just don't say anything now, because if we want to bring you back, it'll be difficult to roll back that decision. So they obviously still see value in the man. I think that's the only thing that explains it, to my mind, because he is being asked to hold on announcing anything. Because, I mean, why wouldn't he otherwise? Yeah, immediately after the World Cup, yes, lots of emotion, lots of blame, lots of, he got run out, couldn't finish it, left the ball outside off stump when we needed 10 runs and over to get over. I mean, that was just, if he'd come out a month or two later, people would have calmed down by then, right? But I think he's been told not to say anything because they're not sure of, they don't have the confidence in Rishabh Pant or Sanju Samson, for that matter, to say that these are our guys for the World T20. And I think that is the real problem, right? And also, of course, we had that question from Uday Kiran, so I'm sure we'll come to that later.
Yeah, interesting. Of course, very contentious, very sort of controversial, lots going on. What I do want to share really quickly, so we normally do our kind of listener tweet section near the end of the episode, but because we're talking about Dhoni, this one is interesting. So, DJ, you actually put out a poll online on Twitter saying, will we see Dhoni play for India again? Vote below and give your reasons in the comments. And amazingly, we got loads and loads and loads of votes. And amazingly, the answer was 51.9% no chance and 48.1% well, of course. Well, of course, being one of Dhoni's signature catchphrases. So 48 to 52, basically, a Brexit-style divide, really, really, really close. But some of the interesting comments that I want to highlight. Gautam Gupta says, why couldn't he play? He's the fittest. He's the best when it comes to chasing. Look at India versus New Zealand, even in the World Cup semi. I think he could have basically made the runs had he played the full overs. Don't say he won't play. I'm his diehard fan and hope he plays. Dhaval Panchal says, Dhoni's going to beat the hell out of bowlers during IPL 2020 and break the doors for selectors. On the flip side, Arjun Srinivasan says, I'm a Dhoni fan, but I think he's going to call it a day. Abhilash M says, I think he has silently slipped into retirement. He may not announce it ever or might wait till post-IPL 2019. J Cricket Dude said, he'll probably get a farewell series or farewell game at least. It'll bring in some dough for the BCCI 2. Really quickly, Arindam Saha says, should have called his time on his T20 career a couple of years back, would have benefited India in the World Cup in England with Pant, DK, whoever else playing those T20s. And finally, Siddharth Sanjeev says, I'm a big Dhoni fan and I myself voted no. I'm sure Dhoni's not going to make a comeback. Even he knows it. I'm sure he's just trolling everybody out there. So thank you all, as always, for listening, writing in, sending us your feedback. Clearly, this one is as divisive an issue as DJ said Brexit or many of the things that have divided us 50-50 over the years. A lot remains to be seen. I think how this kind of comes to life is going to be really, really interesting. So, DJ, any closing thoughts on MS Dhoni?
Yeah, I wanted to ask you the question that Uday Kiran actually sent in to us. And the question was that his friends argue that MS Dhoni is actually behind the bad performances of Rishabh Pant indirectly. Their point is that MS is not announcing his retirement. So it's like a hanging knife on top of Pant's head and is an added pressure. It disturbs the free flow of Pant, which is his strength. So Ashwin, your opinions, please, on this. I'm very interested in the answer to this because it seems like a very convoluted way of explaining Rishabh Pant's performances, but maybe there's something to it.
Yeah, on the one hand, I kind of get it. There are elements of it I get, right? If you're trying to break into the team, I mean, you can find equivalent examples for other roles, not just wicket keepers. But if you're trying to break in the team, you're getting a chance. But the incumbent, your predecessor, who's one of the best to have ever played the game, one of the most successful of all time, both leader and wicket keeper, is still kind of on the sideline saying, maybe I'll come back and steal your spot, maybe not. That can add to stress. I think that's valid. And I think there's an element of uncertainty to Rishabh Pant's game that is triggered by not knowing if his spot is secure. And there's an element of not knowing his spot is secure that is triggered by Dhoni not having retired.
Because I've just started watching the show called Succession, so that's very interesting.
I just started it too, actually. Funny, we didn't talk about it, but I just started it a few days ago. I'm on episode 5 right now, season 1.
Awesome. Anyway, go on. Sorry.
No, it's a good show. I also can't get that theme song out of my head. It's a really, really catchy theme song, but we're not sponsored.
It is, but it's so amazing that you see the uncertainty of the successor, right? What he's trying to step into, the shoes that he's trying to step into are so big. And he struggles so much with that, right?
I agree. I feel like we spent enough time talking about this that if any of our listeners has a link up with HBO, we should try to pitch them for sponsorship because we plugged this quite a bit with all that. Anyway, Succession is a good show. But I do think there's something interesting to say Pant is struggling from the fact that Dhoni has not called it quits. Now, I don't think that's the excuse. I don't think that's the all-encompassing excuse. Pant has severe technical flaws that get kind of covered up because he's a confidence player. So while he's finding his own confidence, just playing high energy, high confidence cricket, his technical flaws get covered up. As that goes away, he starts to have this holy crap moment where he realizes there are flaws in his game, and then that leads to a downward spiral. So net, I think it matters. I think it plays a role. I do not think it is the entirety of why he's been struggling.
Interesting. So Uday, hopefully that answers your question and gives your give you enough ammunition to fire back at your friend, right? So thanks, Ashwin.
All right. Anyway, well said. Thanks. Good discussion on wicket keepers. A couple of other interesting things been happening in the Indian kind of national setup. The first is Ambati Rayudu, the man who's been the source of so much controversy over the years, from leaving the traditional BCCI setup to go play in the ICL. For those of you who remember, the ICL was founded sort of in parallel to the IPL. And then he came back in. Then, of course, he was selected and backed as the number 4 batsman, then got dropped, and the whole 3D glasses comment, and Vijay Shankar came back in. DJ, do you want to walk our listeners through what happened with him most recently?
Yeah, so Ambati Rayudu retired before the World Cup. Obviously, he had the 3D glasses issue. He tweeted 3D glasses. He'll be watching the World Cup on 3D glasses, kind of mocking MSK Prasad's comments on Vijay Shankar being a 3D player. So in July, he quits all cricket over his World Cup exclusion. This was after Rishabh Pant actually went to England instead of Rayudu again. In August, so a month later, he rethinks his retirement and returns for Hyderabad. In September, he's named the captain. And in November, he says that I'm not going to play Ranji Trophy because there's politics and corruption. And he reverses his decision to come out of retirement. So he's now back in retirement. So, I mean, it reminded me very much of the Syed Afridi story where he was a youngster prodigy, and then he had his action question when he bowled off spin, then he retired, then he reverse retired and retired again. So, Indian version of Afridi, Mr. Rayudu.
So retired, unretired, and then I guess unretired, right?
Correct.
Easiest way to try to articulate.
Correct.
Never staying out of the news. So really interesting. I think the last thing I want to share before we go to break, really kind of funny interactions on Twitter happening, on social media in general. I think this one was on Instagram. But there are loads of sides now trying to start building up hype for the IPL. And why wouldn't you? At the time of recording this, we are 18 days from the auction. As soon as the auction comes, there's another kind of month of excitement with the squads, etc. Then as things die down again, it starts to build up in the lead up to March. So I personally, as a marketing guy, I think the IPL does an amazing job of keeping the buzz and the hype up even in the off season. But there are several teams posting, like, Rajasthan posted something to the effect of 9 runs to defend in the final over. Who do you want charging in? Do you want Archer? Do you want somebody else, etc.? And the Royal Challengers Bangalore, poor guys, have never come close to winning a season. But that Twitter handle, the social media person posted, you have 240 runs to chase in 20 overs. Kohli comes out to bat. Who do you want accompanying him? Partha Patel or Devdutt Padikkal? And I thought that was interesting because Devdutt Padikkal has had a great breakthrough domestic season, and that's kind of what they were trying to highlight. And of course, Partha Patel, being the awesome, sassy guy he is, immediately replied saying, hold on, guys, why do you want us to give 239 runs to begin with? It was just bizarre. I think if you're coming up with a situational question for your fans to try to answer, a little bit odd to try to assume their bowlers are going to be as shitty as they've been for the last 11, 12 years, pardon my language, and assume they'll give 239. But hey, maybe the RCB social media guy is more realistic than their captain, their leadership, etc. So we'll see. Lots of funny stuff happening on the internet. 18 days away from the IPL auction. With that, we're going to take a quick break. Check out what IVM has gone out on other shows this week, and we will be right back after this break.
Hey everybody, welcome to another awesome week on the IVM Podcast Network. If you are not following us on social media, please make sure you do. And it's about time that you did. So we're IVM Podcast on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Go to whichever platform you prefer or all three of them and click and follow. Also, you should check out our Instagram feed. We have a lot of interesting stuff going on over there. Peeks inside what's going on in the studio, polls, all kinds of cool stuff. So definitely come out there. Want to thank our sponsors this week, Cambly, Intel, and Storytel. Our sponsors make this stuff possible, and so please make sure that you shout out to them. Let them know that you appreciate it. One more note before we get into talking about what went on in the network this week, and that was that I would appreciate, deeply appreciate it, if you guys could go to ivmpodcast.com/survey or go to the website and click on the survey heading. And what we're going to do is we're going to do another listener survey. We'd like to know a little bit more about you, who's listening to us, why you're listening to us, what you want out of us, all of that kind of stuff. So, it would be really, really helpful to us if we could get a little bit of more information from you guys about who you are. And that would help us kind of go out and talk to advertisers, which is, again, as I mentioned earlier, how we get this thing going. So this week we're premiering a new Hindi storytelling show. It's called Tapri Tales and it's hosted by Madhuri Advani. Madhuri narrates day-to-day stories and occurrences in women's lives across generations. This week she questions the tea-serving traditions in our house through the mother and daughter pair in her story called Chai Ki Cha. On Cyrus Says, Cyrus is joined by senior journalist and author Veer Sanghvi. He talks to Cyrus about his new book Game Changers and discusses the prominent personalities that have impacted India. They also touch upon election results and what the future might hold. On Storytellers and Storysellers, Vineet is joined by journalist Manush Kapal and co-founder of Gully Gang Entertainment, Chaitanya Kataria. Together, they talk about the hype around hip-hop in India and its cultural impact. On Filter Coffee, Karthik is joined by NBA commentator and author Akshay Manwani. In the episode, Akshay expresses his passion for classic Indian cinema, especially the works of Sahir Ludhianvi and Nasir Hussain, and discusses the evolution of the NBA in India. On Ganatantra, Dr. Ornit Shani joins Saryu and Alok to discuss the first electoral rolls, the entrenchment of democracy in India, and why, despite trying times, we must take heart. On the Empowering series, Zarina is joined by Dr. Mithika Kanabar. They discuss the relationship between stress and addiction. On Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav talks about his 6-month-long stay in Shanghai and how it changed his outlook towards Chinese tourists. On Agla Station Adulthood, Ayushi and Ritasha test each other by asking 20 questions. And with that, let's get you on with your show.
All right, guys, welcome back. We talked lots and lots about the Indian national side, the upcoming West Indies series. We're really excited about it. By the time we're with you next week, for next week's episode, 2 of the T20s should be done. But there's been a few other games going on. So I'm going to start with domestic cricket. DJ, I don't honestly remember watching too much of the Syed Mustaq Ali Trophy in the past. I know last year it started to become a big deal. Did you watch it this year? I know you and I were messaging each other. I watched the entire final and most of the 2 semifinals as well.
So I watched the final today because being a Sunday, I was at home. I wasn't really going out for obvious reasons. So I was lying in bed and watching the game on Hotstar, and a really, really good game, man. I mean, it was Karnataka versus Tamil Nadu, some big names in there, lots of India players. You mentioned Devdutt as well, who's in the reckoning for RCB. So really good quality game, I thought. I mean, also, obviously, I've been following the matches for performances of players like Prithvi Shaw. BCCI Domestic has been tweeting about that sort of stuff. Things like Surya Kumar Yadav and his performances, I mean, those have been tracked fairly closely by fans. And I mean, those are the players that we're looking to really make sure that they get into the squad. So Surya Kumar Yadav is one of them. One of your favorites, Manish Pandey, played a great innings today and fielded absolutely out of his skin. And Ashwin had a great day as well. Unfortunately, couldn't take them across the line. But I mean, I to be completely honest with you, I did not know this trophy existed until this year, because I think it's been marketed a lot better. But yeah, good to see the amount of domestic T20 talent, which is not the IPL. It's like the IPL without the foreign players, right?
Yeah, I think it's interesting. This tournament, the Syed Mustaq Ali Trophy, the T20 domestic tournament, seems like it started in 08-09. It had a few ups and downs, went through some tumultuous times, was disbanded, brought back, etc. But I really feel like, thanks to the number of international players that are playing it, the number of IPL players, it's kind of found the limelight. So really quickly, to just explain to folks what happened, the final was today. It was Karnataka versus Tamil Nadu. Interestingly, the same 2 teams that met in the final of the Vijay Hazare Trophy, which was the ODI tournament. And Karnataka, captained by Manish Pandey, but also featuring Lokesh Rahul, Mayank Agarwal, Karun Nair, and then their bowling is a little bit kind of weak from an international player standpoint, but they do have Shreyas Gopal and Krishnappa Gautam, who both have had fairly good IPL seasons. Tamil Nadu, meanwhile, obviously Washington Sundar, captained by Dinesh Karthik, Ravi Ashwin. So lots of big names. An outstanding match. I won't go through too much detail, but came down basically to the last ball. 3 runs needed for the last ball to win, 2 to tie, and Tamil Nadu got 1. So they fell short by 1 run. Karnataka won the Syed Mustaq Ali Trophy by 1 run. DJ, did you watch that? Did you see what Ashwin did on that last ball when he was on the nonsense end?
Yeah, it was great. He took his pads off, right? And his helmet, but he gave his helmet away as well and then called it back. I don't know why. The umpire seemed to say something about that.
Yeah, I'm not sure why. I was going to ask.
Yeah, maybe
there's a minimum amount of padding you need or something, and who knows?
No, I don't think there is. I mean, I guess it was pata nahi, because it was the last ball. He figured that he'll run quicker without the pads, right? But I wanted to actually ask you, I think it was a great game altogether and a great advertisement for domestic T20 cricket. But how much do you think this is going to affect the IPL auction? You've already pointed out it's only 18 days away, right? And someone like Gautam, I think he's been let go of by his franchise. And he bowled that last over kind of under quite a lot of pressure, got hit for 2 boundaries on the first 2 balls, and then pulled it back from there, which I just thought was an incredible performance for him to have pulled it back from there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Bowled a brilliant over. I mean, they had a couple good catches in the field. So I absolutely think it'll affect the IPL auction. I think there are a few names. I mean, Devdutt Padikkal scored over 1,000 runs in the Vijay Hazare Trophy. He just had an outstanding Syed Mustaq Ali Trophy as well. So he's been retained by the RCB team. Surya Kumar Yadav had a breakthrough season, but there are a few others, like Harshal Patel had a pretty good season with the bat, was let go by the Delhi team. Krishna Gautam, as you mentioned. So I definitely think there are some of these names on this. They're not going to be the huge marquee signings for the franchises, but there could be a few interesting pickups by the teams.
Yeah, and your favorite player, Manish Pandey, he did himself no harm at all with that innings today and that run out in the last over. And did you know he's getting married tomorrow?
I did. Pretty amazing to captain your side to a victory and then go get married the next day. So very exciting. Good for him. I think, what I wanted to say, what I thought was interesting is, there's just so much demand for cricket in India. I think what they did well this year that they haven't done so far is kind of 3 or 4 things, if you think about it. The first, they made sure at least half the side for Delhi, Bombay, in this case, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, at least call it 4 players have been international players. The second is they made sure the semis and the finals were in an off week for the national team. So in between the 2 series, like we mentioned last episode, there's a 12-day gap between the end of the Bangladesh series and the start of West Indies, and they made sure a lot of the big games were in this time. And the third is, I thought they made sure the grounds were full, and maybe linked to the first 2, but they made sure there was lots of crowds. And then obviously it was aired on Hotstar, which many of us have subscriptions to who live abroad as well, just because of the IPL and the World Cup, etc. So I don't know. From my perspective, I think they're getting close to finding a winning formula for this domestic league. I would look forward to seeing it grow, continue to do well. And I 100% agree with you. I think it will impact the auction. On that note, do you think there was anybody from the trophy from this tournament who will get an extra large bid from the IPL auction just because of their performance?
I don't know. I mean, I think most of the players that did pretty well have already been retained, right? Like someone like Surya Kumar had a very good season. Prithvi Shaw made a good comeback after his doping ban. As you said, Devdutt has already been picked up by the RCB. I think Gautam is a player that people will be looking out for because he has been doing well. Consistently, he's a big hitter as well with the bat, and he's useful with the ball, right? He held his nerve at the end, which I just found fascinating. Also, I mean, you could tell how much this game, I mean, it wasn't an international game, it wasn't an IPL game, but you could tell how much it meant to the players. Did you see Ashwin's reactions after he took those 2 wickets earlier in the day, and then his reaction after hitting those 2 boundaries on the first 2 balls of the last over? So
yeah, that was pretty exciting, to be honest, to see a test match, almost a legend or an icon of the test match game already. I mean, 350 plus wickets, plays IPL, has played many different formats, many all around the world, to still see the kind of passion and energy he's bringing. Outstanding. I really enjoyed that. And personally, selfishly, as a Delhi Capitals fan, I was really excited to see he tried some interesting stuff. He opened the innings once. He came at number 3 once. He opened the bowling once. He bowled in the death overs a couple of times. So interesting to see. He's really trying to shape his game to be a high impact limited overs cricketer.
And so was there someone you had in mind you thought would be the franchises will have their eye on out of this trophy? Because you probably followed it closer than I have, right?
No, I think you addressed it pretty well. I thought what was interesting, there are a couple of guys like Aditya Tare who over the years has kind of fallen out. He's played for Mumbai, he's played for Delhi, he went back to Mumbai. So somebody like him may get a pickup. I do think it increased the market value of somebody like a KL Rahul who had a good season. Obviously, he's staying with the Kings 11 Punjab, but even from an India standpoint, I think he kept pretty well as well. So I don't know. We spent the first half of this talking about wicket keepers. Maybe the India selectors are watching this and saying maybe Rahul can keep. And then I think Manish Pandey as well, exactly like you said, did himself no harm. I think the last name that I thought was really interesting is Mayank Agarwal. He had a pretty good season, not the best, but not bad at all. And he's cemented his spot for a little while, at least in the test team. Maybe they start looking at him as the kind of future replacement for Shikhar Dhawan in the limited overs format as well, because he can do it and he can clearly play at this level. So that's the only other player I thought may have helped his chances to shore up some India opportunities. Right. Anything to add? Yeah.
Yeah, and I really enjoyed Rahul's keeping, actually. I thought his stumping of Suchit was fantastic. It was a key wicket as well, Dinesh Karthik, right? It was just no fuss. It looked like a difficult one, which he made look easy. So maybe there is a case for Rahul to keep and for us to fit in that extra batsman. Someone like, as you say, maybe a Manish Pandey in the middle order. Who knows?
Yeah, See, we'll definitely spend lots of time talking about wicket keepers on the show in the coming weeks and months and years. Right. With that brings us to the end of the Indian kind of section. There have been some two big test matches happening around the world. So obviously, Australia continues to play Pakistan, and they're playing in the Adelaide Oval this week. Interesting match. Obviously, without talking too much about the match, big breakthrough innings for David Warner. Had a very, very disappointing Ashes on his comeback after the year away from the game, but 335 not out. Absolutely outstanding. I mean, has put his team in a match-winning position. DJ, David Warner, we talked about before Sehwag being kind of a quality test player. David Warner, very similar kind of style, comes out attacking. What do you think about that knock? Did you get a chance to watch any of it?
So I didn't actually get to watch it because I think it's a day and night test, and that's not great time-wise for me. I watched the highlights, and Pakistan just looked hapless, and he was just hammering them, man, to be honest. He was just doing whatever he felt like. I think if he'd stayed out for another half an hour, Brian Lara's record may have been in danger, but there was some rain around the corner, and Tim Paine, I know, wanted to declare to get the Pakistani batsman in. That said, a triple century in any format. Yeah.
Let me quickly ask you about that. Do you think that was the right call?
See, the team comes first, right? And there was rain around the corner, and they wanted to bowl at the Pakistani batsman, and it was vindicated by Stark. I think they had them 6 down. So what you don't want to do is to lose the chance to win a test match. So if the rain had come down and it had been drawn and Warner would have got 400, I think the captain would have come under quite a lot of scrutiny for allowing an individual's ambition to override the team ambition, because that's not the ethos of a team sport, right? So I actually think that similarly, Mark Taylor, when he got his 334, later says that yes, he declared because he was at par with the Don and all of that stuff, but he kind of regretted it later because Pakistan apparently went in and got 480 for 9 or 580 for 9, and the match was a draw. So he was just like, I may as well have stayed out. But unlike that, I think Australia really had a chance of winning this series 2-0, and Tim Paine had to give his bowlers the best shot of bowling Pakistan out twice. So I think that was right. And just to continue what I was saying, yes, Pakistan were flat. Yes, they were not good. But to get 300 in any form of the game, any level of opposition, even if it's Varun batting all day over 2 days against 10-year-old kids, I think it takes some level of perseverance and dedication, right? So kudos to Warner, and I think well done to him. Poor Varun isn't here this week to defend himself even. But I think 300 is in any form of the game a big achievement.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think well said. Really, really excited. Happy for him. David Warner has proved himself as a quality test cricketer. I think what was interesting was in response, the Pakistani team struggled early on, but then had a brilliant partnership between Babar Azam and Yasir Shah. Babar falling just short of another century, making 97. Yasir Shah making his century. Obviously, then they got all out. They've come back and they've lost a couple of quick wickets in the top order again. So looks like at this time, the match is going to end in an Australia victory again. But have you been watching DJ Babar Azam bat at all? Some people are saying there's a new Fab Four in town. Joe Root doesn't deserve his spot there anymore. Babar Azam belongs in the Fab Four. Do you think he's just surrounded by a team of 10 cricketers who are not at the same level as him, and he's here to stay and one of the all-time greats at this point? So
look, Babar is still young, right? He's 25. He hasn't achieved perhaps as much as the Fab Four or the Fab Three before him have achieved. You're talking about Steve Smith, Kane Williams, and Virat Kohli, and at one point it was Joe Root. Now we'll obviously speak about Joe Root later in the show as well, because he's been doing okay of late again. But I think Babar certainly has the potential to get there, and it's exciting watching him bat. I'll tell you the truth. He has a beautiful bat flow. It's the sound of his bat. There was a clip that Cricket Australia put out of him batting in an empty Perth stadium in one of the warm-up games, and the sound of his bat was just amazing. It was like a gunshot every time he hit the ball, and that sound, the only other time I've heard that is when Kohli is batted. So he has a lot of potential. I wouldn't go comparing him as yet to a Virat Kohli or a Steve Smith or a Kane Williamson or even a Joe Root, because what they have achieved in the game already is colossal. Babar, for lack of opportunities playing against top-class opposition, probably hasn't got that much, but he nearly had 2 back-to-back hundreds, right? He got out for 97 in this game to a brilliant catch by Tim Paine, another wicket-keeper that we must speak about. So I think in a few years we could possibly see him when he kind of gets into his peak at between the ages of 27 to 30, if he continues going this way, there's no reason for there not to be a Fab 4 or a Fab 5, including Babar Azam. And class player, man. I really enjoy watching him bat. I wouldn't though say he's in the same class yet as the other boys.
Thanks. Well said. I think really interesting. And on that, we're going to talk our final thing of this show, which is New Zealand is playing England. After a scintillating first test match, I think this test match, New Zealand's put on 375. Another really rock star performance from BJ Watling, who stayed almost 200 deliveries, only made 55. The new guy, Daryl Mitchell, made 73. And of course, Tom Latham racked up yet another century. So it continues to be in stellar form. But we're at the beginning of day 4 at the time of recording this, and England has responded with 328 for 5. Interestingly, the man who everybody's been calling to leave out of this so-called Fab 4, Joe Root, is currently not out on 149. Looks like he may go on to continue making a big score, and has Ollie Pope batting with him, with a couple of all-rounders still to come, Sam Curran and Chris Wook. So DJ, as our resident English player, or English resident rather, in this team, anything to add on this one?
No, nothing really. I mean, I think England have needed a shot in the arm. They've got pretty weak batting lineup, and if Joe Root isn't performing, it looks even weaker. So well done to Rory Burns and Joe Root to get those hundreds. Rory Burns was obviously very disappointed with the way he got out in the game, and maybe Joe Root's got his mojo back, and good for him, man. I mean, I think Test cricket needs a strong English batting lineup to stay in the good health that it currently is in. Ashwin, before we wrap up, I have one question for you. And the question is, will we see MS Dhoni playing for India again? Because we asked the question to our listeners and to our Twitter. But do you think, without the emotion of whether he should or not, do you think that whether we will see MS Dhoni play for India again?
That's a loaded question. I thought we were done with the wicket-keeper conversation.
No, I just realized it wasn't fair, because we asked our listeners, and we asked followers on Twitter what they thought. We haven't actually given an answer as to what we think, whether this will actually happen or not. So I think we should tell them.
Yeah. So if the question is, do I think MS Dhoni will don India colours at least once more? Forgetting what I think should happen, I think the answer is yes. I think he will at least once more. What format, how many games, whether it's a farewell series or he makes a comeback, etc., all TBD. But I think we're not done seeing him in India colours. But what about you? What do you think?
Man, you can't see the smile on my face right now to hear you say that. But I actually think we won't see him. And I hate saying that as a massive Dhoni fan. And I know we've debated so much about MS Dhoni and his future on this show, but I don't think we will see him ever come back. I think we'll see him in an IPL game, and I think that will be a fitting finale for MSD. He'll sign off, I think, in the next IPL. But I don't see him making an India comeback. And if he does make an India comeback, we've got larger problems to deal with. And that's where this is coming from, not from a desire not to see MS Dhoni play again in India shirt. There's nothing more than I would like that I would like more than that. But for me, it would be symptomatic of a larger problem and larger issues, and why we are going back to the grand old man of Indian cricket almost to try and rescue us when we've got all this massive amounts of talent coming through the pipeline. So I'd love to see it, but I don't think it is going to happen. So there you have both our answers. So I just wanted to be fair to everyone here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for raising that, putting us on the spot, making sure we recorded our points of view. So very interesting. You heard it here first on the Edges and Sledges Cricket Show, which we should rebrand at some point to be the Edges and Sledges Wicket-keeper Show, if not quite the Rishabh Pant Show. But that brings us to the end of episode 86. Despite no Indian cricket this week, in international cricket rather, it's been an eventful week, lots of news, lots of chatter. Thank you as always for sending in your questions, your comments. We love hearing from you guys. We are at One Tip One Hand on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or you can email us anytime at contact@onetiponehand.com. We will make sure we read every message and we try to reply where possible, and obviously address your comments on the show. So that brings it to a wrap. DJ, thank you for joining. Varun will hopefully be back with us next week when we can correctly figure out time zones again. And with that, we will see you in about a week's time. Thank you so much, everybody.
Filter coffee is a fascinating beverage. You need to pick the right beans, blend them in the right proportion, roast them to perfection, and slow brew at the right temperature to get the perfect cup. Which is exactly like great conversations as well. You need to track down the most interesting minds, get them into their zone, and settle down for an unhurried, unscripted chat. And coffee for me is always, always, always best enjoyed with friends. I'm Karthik Nagarajan, and do share my table as I meet some of the most interesting people I know and sit them down for a strong cup of coffee and an even stronger conversation. Join me every Wednesday for a freshly brewed episode. This is not frappe. This is the Filter Coffee Podcast.
Janice, what do you think couples did before TV was invented?
I don't know, go for walks on the beach, long drives, fancy dinners, have more sex maybe?
But what did we do when we decided to move in together? We debated between the Chromecast and the Fire Stick.
We gave up on sleeping early so we could stay up watching true crime shows.
We got ourselves 3 cat babies.
And basically became the cutest couch potatoes around.
Okay then.
In case you guys still haven't got it, we are a TV crazy, Netflix loving, binge watching Mr. and Mrs.
I'm Anirudh Kuha.
I'm Janice Sequeira.
And if like us, you snort TV for breakfast, lunch and dinner, this is the podcast for you.
Tune in every Thursday on the IVM Podcast app or wherever it is that you get your podcast from. This is
Mr.
and Mrs.
Binge Watch.